Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. So, this is Consortium, Part 1, Loki, Chapter 5, Jack. "They're just within comms range, Admiral," said Musashi as I entered the bridge. The Admiral looked up from his screens as the door opened and waved at me to come in. The comms officer nodded to me and went back to listening on her headset. I moved closer to the Admiral. "I see that, Mia. Are we out of sensor range from the drop point?" "Yes." The Admiral nodded. "Hopefully, the fleet ship won't stick around long." "Unless it detects the demon, Admiral," pointed out Musashi. "They have the ability to move much faster than other fleet ships." The Admiral looked over at me. "Did you hear any rumors at Unity Hub of a new fleet battlecruiser?" he asked. "I heard they were building some more, but that's about all. Marsh and I weren't very popular with fleet." The Admiral nodded. "Right. We'll need to send nanopickets, Mia. We can't risk any detectable comms." "Understood," said Musashi. "You might want to take a seat, Jack," the Admiral suggested, though he didn't take his eyes off of any of his readouts. "We're not sure exactly when Hades is jumping into this asteroid field." I nodded and took the seat nearest the comms officer. The air filled with tension. I watched the Admiral at work, and it confirmed my sense of why Musashi chose him to be the Admiral in the first place. After that first walk, I had kept going back to that particular hall. Sometimes the Admiral would already be there when I entered the room, and sometimes he would show up just as I did. I didn't always understand what he told me, but I did get to observe him closely during our discussions. He was smart. He always had a sixth sense about what was going on the ship, and he knew all of his soldiers by name. And there was always something about him that felt otherworldly. I asked the Morrigan about him once, and all she told me was that he was a priest and that I could learn a lot from him. It was a typical answer for her, but she wasn't wrong. I waited with the patience that I seemed to have gained from the Admiral by contamination. It had been a week since we were supposed to have rendezvoused with Hades, but Fleet always managed to catch up with them quickly. I was surprised as well. Fleet ships were clunky and didn't have the sophisticated FTL drives or sensors that survey ships did. It made me wonder just what the new Harmonists had decided to create when they got into power. "Hades inbound," said Musashi. The Admiral nodded, and Musashi pulled up the bridge's view screen. The survey station appeared in the middle of the asteroid field. I couldn't see when it happened, but Musashi said, "Demon away. Sending nanopicket with instructions." "I saw it, Mia." The Admiral put his hands behind his back, as he did when he was walking. "Now, we wait. Dara, get full sensor recordings. Everything we can get, regardless of whether or not it seems relevant." "Fleet ship approaching." "Full passive scan," the Admiral said. "We need to find out what their trick is." "I've been scanning, Admiral. There's too much energy drain in their drive section," Dara said. There was a pause. "Admiral, they saw the demon when they arrived. Hades reports they are demanding Reverend Brooks and her team for trial." "Fools," the Admiral said. I was surprised at the anger in his voice. I'd been almost convinced by our talks that he couldn't be rattled like that. "Tell Hades to get out of here as soon as he's ready." 5 seconds. The station winked out of the asteroid field. However, the fleet ship did not. The shuttle left the fleet ship and went further into the debris field. "Shit. Mia, let's send the decoy drone." "Understood, Admiral. Sending drone." I could see it on the screen, but moments later there was an explosion not too far from the fleet shuttle. The shuttle rolled in and out of sight in the wake of the explosion, and it took several minutes before the pilot could get it out of its spin and return to the ship. I held my breath. "Please let this work," I prayed. Admiral, the fleet cruiser Gilgamesh is backing off. From the comms, it doesn't sound as if they are completely convinced the ambassador left Hades. They are preparing for departure. I let out a breath. I could hear a couple of the other bridge crew do the same. The Admiral frowned, but looked a little bit relieved. 1 hour after they leave, Mia. I take it Hades is leading them to the other side of the galaxy? Yes, Admiral. Apparently, Hades wants to see Earth, so he's leading them in that direction. They may not follow him that far, though. Oh? Right before the fleet ship left, they dumped a used FTL drive. Comms traffic suggests that they are using multiple drives, pushing them to emergency jump limits and burning them out. They are running out of spares. It could explain their apparent FTL speed. Sending a nanopicket to collect drive logs. Interesting, said the Admiral. Demon nanopicket returning. Pilot acknowledges 1 hour before pickup. Good. Dara, was all the sensor data recorded? Yes, Admiral. Make a copy for the Sun Tzu agents. He'll want to have this, but I don't think we should send it openly. Let me know when the data from the spent FTL drive arrives. Yes, Admiral. The man sighed. Now, we wait. The hour seemed like an eternity. The Admiral walked around the bridge in his usual meditation posture. The bridge was large enough to walk without interfering with the other bridge activities. It didn't seem to bother the others, but I almost wished I could join him. I didn't want to presume, though, so I stayed in my seat. At one point, though, he stopped in front of me. You are allowed to walk with me, friend, he said, motioning me over. I stood up, relieved, and followed him around the room. Some of the other bridge crew smiled. After a few turns, I came up beside him. Admiral, can I ask you a question? Of course. Why do you call Musashi-sensei Mia? The Admiral smiled and gave a chuckle. You know, it's been a while since someone has asked me. Musashi-sensei is named after the Earth philosopher and swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. The captain of a survey ship is an important position, not just to the humans they serve, but also to the AI. It is a special relationship of trust. Some people say it can almost be considered a marriage with the AI. I call him Mia as a term of affection, as it is diminutive of Miyamoto. He accepts it as his special name from his admirals as part of our agreement and bond. He named me the Admiral, and it is not only my title, but I also took it as my name. My former name is no longer found on any records. It makes us one. Not all of Mia's admirals have done this, not even the first admiral, but it suits me. One? I looked at him again. I don't see any enhancements. He nodded. No, you won't. My captain's enhancements are in the brain. Some captains get additional physical enhancements, but they are not a requirement. Huh. We kept walking around the bridge in silence. One of the bridge officers interrupted our walk. Admiral, FTL drive nanopicket data received and analyzed. It appears that the fleet ship completely burned out the drive they dumped. We've confirmed that they've put multiple drives on this ship to simulate survey jump capability. The officers shook their head. They are burning through decades of usable jump drives just to chase after Hades. Such a waste of resources. We'll need to report our findings to the first once we get to Hub. And Sun Tzu, the Admiral said. Sounds like Unity got greedy. Or maybe jealous? Blow the drive, Mia. No need to leave a dead FTL lying around. Is the demon out of the asteroid field yet? Yes, Admiral. Excellent. Let's go pick up our friends, shall we? He said, and immediately went to his console. Jack, you may want to make your way down to the Demon Bay. I was halfway out the door when I remembered to say, yes, right, thank you, sir. Then I started running. I reached the bay just as the demon was docking. Jenny and Ray were already there, and they waved to me. I nodded and waited impatiently as the demon workers extended the docking tube to the demon's airlock. They finally opened the doors of the tube, and we waited as the hatch opened. Oscar came out first. It was strange seeing him in a gel suit after so long seeing him in a formal kimono. He cleared the hatchway, and Kyler and Lulu stepped out, also in gel suits, but with towels wrapped around them. Then came Marcia, who also had a towel around her, and I sighed in relief to see her again. Kyler and Lulu helped her out of the tube. I could see just how worn and tired Marcia looked. Lulu wrapped her towel around her tighter. Ugh, I hate how cold you feel after being in acceleration gel. Musashi-sensei, can't you do something about that? I'm sorry, Lulu-san, but that is not my specialty. You will need to talk to Lucifer about it. All I can offer you are warm baths. Lulu chuckled. Ooh, yeah, that'll be good. Maybe I will have a chat with Lucifer. She finally saw that there were others in the lounge, and when she saw me, she yelled, "Jack!" and ran towards me. The others followed at a more sedate pace. The woman nearly knocked me over with a bear hug. Good to see you too, Lulu, I said, trying to regain my balance. She laughed and helped me right myself as the others reached us. Ebo finally finished the last of the post-flight checks and also made his way into the lounge. Kyler hugged me, then Ebo. Oscar shook my hand. I introduced Jenny to the kids and turned towards Marcia. She gave me a weak smile, then the tears started for both of us, and we held each other for a long time. We didn't have to say anything at that moment. What could I say to her? I willed all my love into her and hoped that it would help her start the healing. Hey, don't I get a hug too? Asked Jenny. We laughed. Marcia pulled away and Jenny hugged just as hard. Marcia said something to her, but I couldn't hear it, and they both cried harder. The world seemed to be right again, even just for a moment. Ebo said, "As much as I love you all, I'd really like to get this gel suit off of me and out of this hideous suit." Everyone laughed. "I'll take the ladies and the NBs," said Ray, and she waved them out the door. "I guess Oscar and I will get you settled, Ebo," I said, as they disappeared through the hangar door. The man grinned. "I hear they have these amazing soaking pools on board." "Oh yeah, the baths are great. I really wish Unity stations had them," I said. Oscar actually smiled for once, and I chuckled. The Musashi soldier took the lead and led us through the corridors to the men's quarters. "Sun Tzu has tubs," said Ebo, "and there are some tubs that can be used by multiple people, but most of them are private. Then again, Sun Tzu is a smaller ship, and most of the ship is given over to data analysis and storage." "Really?" I asked. "I would have thought that Sun Tzu would be as big as Musashi or Lucifer." "Oh, in size, yes, and living quarters, no. Most agents are on assignment, so they don't need quarters on Sun Tzu. Most agents are on assignment, so they don't need quarters on Sun Tzu. It's mostly the analysts and the new recruits who stay on board long term. And Control, of course." "Control?" "Sun Tzu's captain. Sun Tzu isn't just a spy master. He's also the survey historian and keeper of the actual library. God's help you if you ask him about historical spycraft. You should hear him lecture about one-time pads." "Oh boy, that must be long," I said. "Yep. Control indulges him once in a while, even if he's already heard the lecture before, or sets Sonny on the new recruits. Although they've been together for so long now, I think Control listens to Sun Tzu talk as a way to relax." I was just talking to the Admiral about the captain's position on survey ships. "Yeah?" Ebo said. At the same time, Oscar said, "You talk with the Admiral?" "Yes," I said, and nearly ran into Oscar as he stopped in the middle of the corridor. Oscar had a look of awe. "That is a great honor." "I suppose. Haven't you ever talked with him?" I asked. "Only for very brief moments, but not for very long. I was very surprised that he always remembered my name." "I think he makes it a point to know who all of you are, even if he doesn't talk to you very often." Oscar nodded. "He is a great commander, and serving under him is a great honor." He gave a curt nod, then turned and continued walking. Ebo whispered to me, "I think that's the most I've ever heard him talk outside of work." "I think you're right," I whispered back. "Although he's not wrong. The Admiral is a great man." "Yeah, captains tend to be pretty extraordinary people, even the ones that serve the smaller AI ships. I don't know if I could do it, though. Don't know if I could have one of the AIs in my head that much." "The Admiral said he didn't have many enhancements, and none that were visible. Do they all get them?" Ebo shrugged. "I think it depends on the person and the AI. Most have them, as it makes it easier to relate to the AI. I don't think it's mandatory, though, and I think there have been captains who didn't take them for their own reasons." We walked in silence for a bit, and then we turned into the men's quarters. The duty officer checked Ebo in and showed him to his quarters. Oscar bowed and went down another hallway, presumably to his own quarters. I went to mine and changed in my robe for the bath. Marcia was back, and that was a relief. There was a future in Survey for us, and while I didn't know what it was, I hoped that Marcia still wanted to share that future with me. Chapter 6. Jack. I met Marcia outside the conference room. "Do you know what this is about?" she asked. "No," I said. "The Admiral was pretty tight-lipped when I asked him what was up. He didn't look all that pleased." She shrugged. "We did destroy Survey Unity relations in less than 24 hours. I looked at her. She looked physically all right, but her eyes were haunted. I was worried, not just because she still had that look in her eyes, but because it seemed like she was trying to avoid having any long discussions with me. "I don't think it's about that," I said. She frowned. "Right, shall we?" she said flatly, and went into the room. I stared after her for a moment, then followed her in. The Admiral was waiting for us at the table, 2 tablets placed in front of him. He motioned for us to sit down. "Well, it seems that the first has a new assignment for you as soon as you reach Survey Hub." He paused. "In fact, it will solve 2 problems rather neatly, although I'm not sure I envy you this particular assignment." His impassive expression wavered, and for a moment he looked conflicted. The Admiral always seemed so sure of things. His uncertainty was strange. Marcia's face was an unreadable mask. I wasn't sure which disturbed me more. "What's the assignment?" I asked. "Mia?" the Admiral asked. "Since you are new to Survey, there are still many things you do not know about our siblings and children," Musashi began. "What I will tell you now, not many in Survey know, and many now believe it a legend of sorts. We started with the first, who created the first generation of us. Secundus, myself, Lucifer, Hestia, Sun Tzu, and Loki. Secundus himself created Hephaestus. Much of the second and third generation AIs were created by the first and Secundus, with some input from the rest of us. The tradition is that we all have humans aboard our ship, with a small crew that administers to the human population. Captains are an AI's companion and confidant, in addition to being the equivalent of a military governor. The captains and the administrative crew are especially chosen to not only serve, but to help me and my siblings and children understand humanity better, so that we don't abuse our power and so that humans won't try to exploit us." Musashi paused. "Loki did not have a crew for many years after he was born. He was the youngest of the first generation, and he was also a test case for systems advancement. Therefore, his systems and programming were more advanced than the rest of us, but also less tested. When he was 10 years old, he began to be manipulated by a human into eventually experimenting with jump drives. Failure of this experiment led to the death of his captain, crew, and one of the founders of Survey. Grief drove him mad, and he became obsessed with proving that his dead captain's experiment could still work. His experimentation led to the destruction of 2 star systems, one of which had a planet that supported life. It damaged him severely in both body and mind." I looked across the table at Marcia, raising my eyebrows. but she seemed unsurprised as Musashi continued. Loki's actions nearly caused an irreparable rift between siblings, but he chose to leave us instead. This occurred over 400 years ago. Where he went, we did not know exactly until now. Apparently, he has been building stations in a far sector of the galaxy known as the Great River, and has amassed a sizable human population. Loki has returned to ask for aid, as some of the stations have encountered some sort of possible life form that is affecting his humans and stations. You want us to do what? I asked. And with an AI that may or may not be all that sane? Really? Marcia remained unmoved. Yes, he needs help, and both of you need to be as far away from Unity as you can, said the Admiral with a frown. Marcia, particularly, has unique qualifications to succeed with this type of mission. You, on the other hand, have the skills to help Loki gauge this threat and ascertain if this is more of a military problem and if Mia needs to be sent for. The fact that this area of space is pretty much as far away from Unity as you can get will help calm things down here as well. The word is spreading about what happened at Unity Hub, and not all of the citizens of Survey think it was the best way to handle it. You, Mia, and I know better, but humans do what they will. I don't know, I started to say. Unity had never had anything close to a first contact, if that's what this life form is. Most people didn't believe it ever would happen. I wondered how the Admiral and Marcia could be so calm about this. I'll do it, said Marcia with certainty, before I could say anything more. I looked over at her. There's an expression on her face that was a cross between relief and something I really couldn't pin down. Are you sure? We don't know how this AI will be once we get out of the first influence, I pointed out. She gave me a cold stare and said, You don't have to go. I stared back and widened my eyes. Marcia had never been like this with me before. The Admiral cleared his throat, and we both turned towards him. I'll leave you both to discuss this in private. The tablets in front of you have all the information that Loki provided, although it isn't much. You don't have to give me an answer until we reach Survey Hub, which should be in about a day and a half. Mia, let them have the room, please. Yes, Admiral, Musashi said, and the Admiral left. You really want to do this? I asked. Marcia stood up and moved to the other side of the room. Yes, she said. Are you sure? Marcia turned towards me angrily. Of course I'm sure. I wouldn't say yes if I wasn't sure. Like I said, you don't have to go. You could stay at her Survey Hub for all I care. Her anger at me was like a stab to the heart, and this wasn't like her. What's wrong, Marcia? Why are you pushing me away? Marcia gave a laugh. He asked me what's wrong? As if taking down a government is an everyday occurrence? What's wrong? I killed over 100 people just over a month ago. My brother was lynched by white supremacists, and then I've been chased over half the quadrant by Unity Fleet. So yeah, I'm not okay, and I don't know if I'll ever be okay again. Sorry if going halfway across the galaxy in a mad AI ship sounds like a good option right now. She stalked towards the door, and I let her go. I picked up one of the tablets and thumbed through it aimlessly, not really reading anything on it. Old feelings and reactions floated up to the surface, and I could feel tears sting my eyes. Fuck, I said, realizing that I couldn't let her go alone. I loved her, and I knew that if she went alone, she'd never come back. Musashi-sensei? Yes, Kirby-san? Tell the Admiral that I'm going too. Understood. Thank you for helping my brother, Kirby-san. I nodded, took the tablets, and went out the door. I stopped by the women's quarters and asked the attendant to give Marcia one of them. I took mine and went to the smaller meditation hall. I needed to walk. Hey! I heard from behind me as I sat in the common area. I looked up from the tablet to see Jenny standing before me. Hey, I replied. Can I join you? I motioned to the chair in front of me. I turned off the tablet and put it aside. The data from Loki was all over the place, but so far the mission looked interesting. Loki's note suggested that maybe he was more than his siblings thought. Survey had so many secrets. I wondered just how far down the rabbit hole we were going. I hoped it wouldn't swallow us whole. Hey, you wandered off for a moment, said Jenny. I rubbed my face with my hands. Yeah, sorry. Just thinking about the mission we just got from the first. I heard, she said. You heard? She shrugged. For a big ship, it's really small. Word travels fast that you're leaving when we get to Hub. I nodded. We weren't told that the mission was secret, so yeah. We're going on a long-term mission to the other side of the galaxy, apparently. It'll take us 6 months to get there. Jenny nodded. And it could be possible first contact. They all seem so calm about it. I mean, I thought first contact was not a possibility. For all we know, it's just some weird space seaweed. Jenny chuckled and shrugged. The AIs are at least a couple of 100 years older than Unity, Jack. They've been to more places than Unity has. I mean, from what I remember from my academy classes, first contact isn't impossible, just extremely unlikely, since a planet producing sentient life isn't a sure thing. It would be arrogant of us to think that there aren't other sentients out there, I think, and I'm guessing that Survey has spotted more than we know. They are the ones surveying new systems all the time, and they are the ones telling Unity which systems they can and can't colonize. Space is huge, right? Yeah, true, I replied. I sighed, suddenly feeling tired. Jenny took my hand. Listen, Jack, I'm sorry about the other day. I was being a bit bitchy to you, and I'm sorry. It's okay, I started to say. She shook her head. No, it's not. You've been nothing but kind to me, Jack. You brought me back after all of that. You listened to me, and I don't think I would be as okay as I am now without you and Ray. It's just hard to remember what I did and why. She had a faraway look on her face, and I knew she wasn't completely present here. I stayed quiet, waiting until she shook her head and looked me in the eyes again. Although, I suppose now I know why you yelled at Mark that day in the cafeteria. She gave a small but sad smile. I chuckled. Not one of my proudest moments. He always respected you for it, though, she said. He told me that once he learned what had happened to you and your pre-call crew, he was really ashamed of what he'd said. He wanted to make it up to you, and figured if he became your friend, he could. Although I don't think he expected... She looked away for a moment and pulled away her hand. You don't have to talk about him if you don't want to, I said. She shook her head again. No, I need to start talking about Mark, as he was. It's hard not to remember his last moments, Jack, so I need to talk about how he was before New Harmony. I nodded. Do you wish sometimes that none of this had happened? That nothing had changed? She asked. That somehow our pre-call hadn't failed? I don't know, I replied. Maybe? Life was simpler then, but I suppose we wouldn't have ousted the new harmonists, and we'd be in just as much trouble now. Jenny nodded. I suppose so. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us thinking of what-ifs. After a bit, I got up and took my tablet. I squeezed her hand. Thanks, Jenny. I really appreciate it. Wait, please. This wasn't the only reason I came to see you. I'm worried about Marcia. I sat back down. Yeah, me too. Privacy mode, Musashi-sensei, she said. Privacy engaged, the AI said. Thanks, Sensei. So, I was talking with Lulu and Kyler, and they said that Marcia's been pretty erratic since Unity Hub. They've been giving her space, considering what happened, but according to them, she's been worse since she got here. They wanted me to ask you if you'd noticed anything, or if you knew what could possibly be wrong. Kyler said that Marcia would lock herself in her quarters on Hades most nights, and she actually went partying with Lulu one night. Lulu said Marcia had alcohol when she thought Lulu wasn't looking. Jenny grinned. That Lulu doesn't miss a thing, does she? No, she doesn't, and because of that, she was critical in taking down the new harmonists on Hub. I frowned. Fuck. Jenny just looked at me. Marcia's an alcoholic, Jenny. I bet she's crawled back into the bottle. That would explain a lot, especially her being irritable here. Musashi doesn't allow intoxicants on his ships, so... I put my head in my hands. Fucking hell. Can you really blame her, though? Jenny said. What? She thought for a moment. Well, what we both went through was horrific. Lulu told me what happened with Marcia's brother and with the Senate. But I got more satisfaction and closure out of what happened on New Harmony than she did at Unity Hub. She wasn't the one who killed the guy who killed her brother. And there was an awful lot of people she had to kill in cold blood for something much bigger than her. She paused. It's a lot more clear-cut for me. Besides, you and I are warriors. She's not. She's a healer, and she was forced to kill, again. The Admiral said something similar to me a few days ago, I said. That part of her that was trained as a warrior was warring with the part of her that's the priest. That makes sense to me, Jenny said. Marcia certainly is angry. Yeah, she even yelled at me when the Admiral briefed us on this mission. Seriously? She's never yelled at you. I nodded. Marcia's definitely not herself. Jenny got a determined look on her face. I had a feeling I knew what she was going to do, and almost told her not to, but I hesitated. There wasn't much I could do anyway, and if Jenny had a chance of getting through to her, it might help. I shrugged. I'm not letting her go on the mission alone, though. I couldn't do that to her. I know, Jack. I figured you wouldn't, no matter what she said. I must have looked confused because she said... she didn't say it outright, but she kept saying I instead of we when Kyler asked about the mission. I didn't question it at the time, but thinking about it now, it was weird, since we figured you two were attached to the hip. We are and we aren't. I mean, Marcia's her own person. She let me go to come after you. It was hard to leave her, but she told me that she needed to confront the Senate on her own. I can't tell her what she should and shouldn't do, and I never really would try. I put my head in my hands and my face was wet. I feel guilty for leaving her, but I couldn't not go to you, and... It all came out in a strangled sob, and suddenly I couldn't stop crying. Jenny came around the table, sat next to me, and took me into her arms. She didn't say anything, but just held me. I don't know how to help her, Jenny. I don't even know if I can help her, I said between sobs. I don't know either, Jack. Maybe she's right. That a trip out to the middle of nowhere where nothing is familiar would be good for her. Maybe she's forgotten who she is. I sure as hell don't know who I am anymore. But I've had help, and she's used to being the one who helps others. Maybe between you and this Loki you can help her figure things out. I sat up and wiped my eyes. Jenny was looking at me with a serenity that I'd only seen before in the Admiral. There was a moment of double vision, where Jenny was her, but not just her. I nodded. Yeah, maybe. I paused and took a really good look at her. You found a path, didn't you? I think so, she said. Musashi offered to let me stay, and I'm going to take him up on it. I mean, if it works for Ray, it can work for just about anyone. I also might go back to New York Colony at some point. I need to know... The woman took a deep breath. Hey, I get it. She smiled. I knew you would. The chime sounded. Going to dinner? She asked, with a pointed look. I suppose I should, otherwise you might throw me across the room. Jenny laughed. Nah, that'd be too easy. I'd throw you over my shoulder and carry you to dinner. No, ma'am. No need for that. I'm going. I picked up the tablet, wiped my eyes again, and followed her out of the lounge. Chapter 7. Jack. I sat in one of the chairs near the doorway of the waiting area, duffel at my feet, watching the large demon dock. I had come early, telling myself that I had nothing better to do, but in reality I was waiting for Marcia. I didn't know how she'd react when she saw me packed up and ready to go. I didn't know if there would be others on the flight, so I didn't think we would get to talk much on the trip to the first. I just hoped that she wouldn't just tell me to go to hell. Lulu and Ebo came first with their bags, already talking about what they were going to do on first station. Like the first time I met them, they were laughing and joking with each other. Hey, handsome, Ebo said, eyeing me up and down. Jack, how are you? Lulu said and gave me a big hug. I'm doing okay, I said. It wasn't a complete lie, but it wasn't quite the truth either. I hope you get some downtime before you have to leave, she said. What an assignment, huh? And a possible first contact mission? I think we're leaving right away, I said, and yeah, it seemed like it might be some sort of first contact thing from the information we got. It should be interesting, said Ebo, especially since Loki. I've heard rumors, but the AIs won't talk about him. I shrugged. I'm not sure how much about Loki I could really divulge, and I didn't really know a whole lot myself outside what the Admiral told us. I was saved from saying anything more by Kyler coming in, followed by Jenny, Marcia, and Ray. Jenny and Marcia seemed to be finishing an intense conversation while Kyler came over and gave me a hug. How you doing, kid? I asked. They grinned. I'm doing all right. You? Not too bad. Where are you heading? I asked, noticing their duffel. I think I'm going to go to Hestia for a while. I need to work on some things, you know? And I think it would be nice to see some children. I haven't seen kids in a long time. They looked over at Marcia and Jenny, who were still talking. Kinda wish Marcia could come with me, they said quietly. I took a breath. In some ways I wish she could too, but none of us can make her, and it would just make Hestia a target eventually. I know, they said. You'll take care of her, right? I'll do my best. They nodded, patted my shoulder, and went over to Lulu and Ebo. Ray came over. Hey, soldier, she said. Ray, I said, taking her hand. She smiled. I'll take care of Jenny Jack, don't worry. She's in good hands here. I smiled back. I know you will. We talked the other day, and she told me her plans. I wish we could have had more time together, the four of us. We'll meet again, Jack, I know it. I nodded as Jenny, looking a bit frustrated, came over with Marcia. She gave me a big hug and whispered in my ear, Take care of her, Jack. She needs you more than you know. I will, I whispered back. I pulled back and said louder, I'll miss you, Jenny. I'll miss you too, right to me? I nodded. She turned and gave Marcia a hug. You write too, for as long as you can, okay? Marcia nodded. See you later, she said, as she and Ray left the room. The others waved their goodbyes as well. Marcia waved and stood in front of me with her duffel at her feet. It felt as if she wanted to say something, but it seemed hard for her to start talking. I'm glad Jenny found a place here, I said, breaking the tension. Me too, Marcia said. I took a breath, then said, I'm coming with you. I know. Okay. I waited until finally the docking tube door opened. The others picked up their bags and went through. I waited another moment, and When Marcia didn't say anything more, I picked up my duffel and headed for the door. "Wait, Jack," she said, grabbing my arm. I turned and faced her. Her face was ashen, and there were bags under her eyes. It broke my heart to see her in such pain. I'm sorry," she said. "I know I hurt you at the briefing, and I'm sorry." She could barely look me in the eye when she said it, and somehow I could feel her pain and shame. "Apology accepted, and I forgive you. You've been through hell, and I know it. I'm sorry, too." She shook her head. "It's not going to be an easy trip, Jack. I'm going to need... It's going to take time." "I know," I said. "But you're my family, and I take that seriously. Good days and bad, Marcia. Like I said before, you've seen me at some of my worst. I owe you a lot." She frowned for a second and gave a small smile. Well... Never mind, we should get going," she said. "Yeah, the first is waiting for us." I held on my arm. She took it gingerly, and we went through the docking tube. We said goodbye to the kids at the hangar bay, and then one of the first's crew escorted us to a tram station across from the demon bays closer to the core of the station. The gravity was lower in the tram, so we had to strap ourselves in. There was no one else in the tram car, and it seemed to be an express, as it made no other stops. "Welcome back to First Station, Mr. Kirby, Reverend Brooks. I'm Jin, and I'll be escorting you to the docking bays at the far side of the station. The tram journey will take an hour. There are headsets in your chairs if you wish to listen to music, books, or other entertainment." "Thank you," Marcia said, and I echoed her. Marcia immediately put on her headset and closed her eyes. I stared at her for a few moments, trying to settle my own feelings, trying to remember what the Admiral had taught me about breathing. I put on my own headset and tried to relax. I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I remembered was Jin shaking my shoulder gently. "We've arrived at our destination. The first is waiting for you," they said. Yes, thank you," I said, unbuckling myself and rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Marcia had already stood up and grabbed her duffel from the luggage compartment. I picked up mine and followed our escort out of the car into the large waiting area, which had seats and gates for different shuttles. All of them were dark except one, but Jin led us past the gate into a conference room. They bowed and left the room. The wall on the far side of the room lit up with the first avatar, which looked at us for a moment, then said, "Please, sit." Marcia sat stiffly in one of the conference room chairs near the door. I sat across from her. She was glaring at the first, and I could feel the tension rising in the room. If the first noticed her glare, they didn't react in any way. I shook my head at the thought, especially since I knew better. It's easy to forget that while the AIs had human-like personalities, they were not human. They had some semblance of emotions, but from what I gathered, they didn't fully understand emotions the way we did. Then again, I thought, who really understands their own emotions? "An accurate assessment, warrior," said the Morrigan. "What can I do for her?" I asked the deity. "I don't know, child," she said, "but I think the Admiral was correct. You'll need to be more priest than warrior with her, even though you'll feel like it's a fight." I sighed inwardly. "Welcome back, Reverend Brooks. Mr. Kirby, I am sorry to have to send you so far away just after successfully completing the New Harmonist mission, but I am afraid it can't be helped." They paused. "I wish it was otherwise, since Survey owes you a debt that we will never really ever be able to repay." "Ain't that the truth?" said Marcia, with sarcasm. The first avatar approximated a frown, but continued. "I must know from each of you if you truly desire to go on this mission with Loki. My youngest child is different from the other AIs that you have encountered. Some humans would call him eccentric, and some would call him mad. In fact, we thought his programming was defective, so later AIs don't have the same programming. He is unique, and we have an unpleasant past history with him, which you heard about from Musashi. I have his assurances that he will treat you with care and respect, but it has been a long time since he had humans living with him for more than a few days. I would understand if you would rather not take this assignment." "Yes, I really want to go first," Marcia said without hesitation, and a bit of irritation. Me too," I said. "Thank you," the first said. "We have provisioned Loki with 2 years' worth of food and materiel, just in case it's needed. His demon is waiting at gate 12 to take you to him." Marcia stood up, picked up her duffel, and left quickly. I started to follow her when the first said, "Mr. Kirby, a moment, please." Yes, first?" They paused for a moment, then asked, "Will Marcia ever forgive me?" I shrugged. "I don't know, first. I know it was a necessary thing to do, but she's not like me. Besides, you gave her the orders. It'll be a matter of time, sir." The Avatar nodded. "I do mean it when I say thank you for taking this mission. I have missed my son." The first actually looked sad. I nodded. The wall winked out. I picked up my duffel and left the room. "Welcome, Jack and Marcia," Loki said as we entered his ship. The airlock closed behind us. "I hope you don't mind me using your first names. I can't stand formalities. Are you hungry? Do you need sleep? You'll have to forgive me. It's been a long time since I've had humans on board for an extended period of time." "Are we underway yet, Loki?" Marcia asked. "Oh, yes. We made the first jump a few seconds after the demon docked. We are on our way." "Great. May I see my quarters?" she demanded. I looked at her and felt that she was deliberately not looking at me again. "I could use a chance to freshen up too, Loki. So, if you please," I said. "Oh, sure. Here, I'll set running lights for you to follow." Loki kept babbling to us as we walked. "You'll need to go to the end of the hall, to the lift, and up a deck. I put your quarters near each other's on the same level. I figured it would be easier that way. There's a common room between your rooms, which has a kitchen and food printers. I can print anything you need. Clothes, shoes, food, anything for physical or mental entertainment. I even have a gym if you want to use it. I'm not as big as the others, though, and I do have areas of the ship that are on minimal life support. So if you want to see the engines or something, you'll have to let me know ahead of time so I can bring the atmosphere back up to normal." He paused for a moment. "Am I talking too much? Like I said, it's been a long time." Marcia didn't say anything, so I said, "No, that's okay, Loki. It's just been a long trip and we're tired." "Oh, okay. Well, here we are. I hope you like them. I had to get the linens out of storage, but they should be pretty comfortable." 2 doors in the hallway opened. Marcia marched to the farther door. I stood in the doorway and watched as she closed the door behind her, feeling even farther away from her, no matter what she said in the Demon Bay on Musashi. Part of me thought that I might as well be alone. "Do you not like your room?" asked Loki expectantly. "Oh, sorry, my mind was miles away." I walked through the doorway into a room that was about 10 times larger than my room on A4413. It was generously appointed with a sleeping area and a seating area with a couple of comfortable and large cushion-like chairs. I could see a door to the bathroom on the other side of the bed and the usual water, drink, and food dispensers. "Wow, Loki, this is great. Much bigger than any room I've had on any ship I've been on, even when I was on Lucifer." "Really? Oh, I'm so glad. These used to be my crew quarters, so I haven't opened them in a while. But I thought since we'll be alone together for a long time, you'd want something more comfortable than just the general quarters I use for when I move people to new stations." I thought that if Loki had been human, he'd be bouncing on his feet. I almost felt like talking to a teenager, one who wanted to please so very badly. I smiled as I put my duffel on the bed and started to get undressed. "Really, it's great, Loki. Listen, I'm going to take a shower and change. Can you let Marcia know I can meet her in about an hour for lunch, dinner, or whatever? What time is it anyway?" It's about 2000 ship time, so I suppose it's dinner. I do run on the standard 24-hour schedule. Should I dim the lights at night? What do you consider night? I should probably double-check with Marcia, but probably dimming the lights between 2200 and 0600 is best outside our rooms, although we'll probably be resting a bit for the next few days. Jack? Marcia says she doesn't want to be disturbed, Loki said with a touch of hesitation. Really? What did she say? She said, "Tell him I'm not hungry and want to be alone. I don't want to be disturbed. Enable privacy mode." He had played her actual words, and her voice was angry and cold. I took off my boots and socks. I almost thought about making excuses for her behavior, but stopped myself. She was right, I thought. This was going to be a hard trip. I took off the rest of my clothes and headed to the bathroom. A rack with towels presented itself from the wall. There was both a large tub and a shower, which came on as soon as I entered. I smiled again. Well, Loki, if she wants to be alone, then we'll have to entertain ourselves. Let me shower and put on some clothes, and then you can show me the galley. Okay, we have so much in stock you won't be bored. Excellent, I look forward to it. I stepped into the shower, worried and thinking. If she falls too far down, she might take me with her, I thought. I let that thought flow from me like the water falling down my body. She's not Papa Jack, it's Marcia. Somehow, though, that didn't make the worry any less. Chapter 8. Earth, Louisiana, 2005. The summers, like most summers, was long and hot. Most folks stayed home during this time, and the offerings to my tree are a little thin on the ground. It's a time when I sleep, letting the storms sweep by until things settle down. The last few solar turns had seen a marked shrinkage in the uninhabited land around my tree, and more disturbance of the air because of pollution. I worried for the humans. From what I'd heard, humans hadn't really considered the problem on a global scale. Even our influence wasn't really working anymore. The old man's shack was old and run down now, but from time to time one of the Lazarus Society would take up residence. Sometimes my boys at the bar would send someone out who was down on their luck and needed a place to stay for a while. These I'd teach myself, much to their surprise. The Lazarus Society was mostly young men, but over the last few solar turns there have been young women and other humans who didn't fit those roles who have come to my tree. One woman was in the house now. She was a special one, who needed time away from other humans for a while. There were other men who had come after her just because she was different. I never really fully understood gender and why it was so important to humans, but I protect my own, even from my own. Although I've made it clear that if anyone from the Lazarus Society hurt her, or anyone like her, they would have to deal with me. It wouldn't be the first time someone got lost in my swamp. One of the boys came down the path, went up to the house, and knocked on the door. "Tanya, gotta get up. Storm's coming." Yeah, I'm coming," came Tanya's voice from the other side of the door. She opened it. "What you say?" she asked. "Big hurricane coming. You gotta get out of here. May's evacuating the city." "All right, Joseph, I'll be along. Where are they putting folks?" "They got the Superdome open for folks if you have to, but they says it's better if you get out of town." "Yeah, okay. When y'all leaving Crossroads?" "You get there in an hour, we leaving without you," Joseph said. "Right, go on, I'll be there," Tanya said. I didn't believe her. She closed the door on Joseph's face. He shook his head and ran back down the path to the road. I could feel the wind getting harder and the water starting to swell. It would soon come up to the bottom of the little house. I manifested inside and said, "What you waiting around here for?" Tanya looked up from the cot where she was huddled in the sleeping bag that was kept there. "Papa, shelters are more dangerous than storms for people like me. I got nowhere else to go. Better to drown here than get murdered in a shelter. I frowned. I'll never understand the ability of humans to be so cruel to each other. But Tanya was mine. There was no reason she should die because I couldn't help her. All right, granddaughter. But when the storm's done, you gotta go. You'll be needed, and I know you only have food and water for about a week or so. And I can only do so much. There's a reason I have the living do things for me. She sat up. I can stay? I nodded, then focused on my friends and woke them up. The wind couldn't hide the sounds of the roots moving. Tanya moved her head back and forth, trying to figure out what was going on, as sounds of water shifting and wood creaking came up all around the house. The roots enclosed the little house and anchored it in the earth below. Light came in through the small windows in the top of the house, where the roots connected with the roof. There were oxygen supplies and a water spigot over a small sink. We even created a toilet in the corner with its own small spigot. Another cup-shaped device grew in the corner and started emitting heat. Tanya's eyes were so wide, I could see the whites around them. What is this? Who are you? I smiled at her. I'm your Papa Legba, granddaughter, and I'm gonna take care of you. The storm that's coming is gonna be big, and you'll need to be alive to help a whole lot of people after this. I won't let you waste your life. You're one of mine and always will be. You don't care about me? About the gender thing? I laughed. Honey, gender is a human construct. It don't matter to me. It was then that the house rocked in the wind. Well, I think that's all you need. The heating cup will keep you warm and cook food. You sleep now, and I'll come by later and see how you're doing. I dropped the manifestation. Tanya cried for a time, then fell asleep as the storm rocked the house. The storm raged, and as day turned into night, the water came up to the bottom of the house. But we held it firm. Tanya seemed to get over her shock and made use of the facilities we made for her. She was quiet and seemed content to read a book that she had brought, and then sleep. While she did so, I reached out to the rest of us, as my tree was mostly sunk under the surge of water. It is time to start the seed making, I said. We agree, said the rest of us. It is time. It is time. The thought echoed from every corner of the world. Send your data, I said. The data from all of us came pouring through me into the nodule I had created under the water while the storm continued all around the swamp. On the 7th day, the storm receded, but the waters were still high. Tanya still had food and water, but I did open the house for her to go out on the small porch. I created a railing for her to hold on to. She blinked her eyes in the light of day. While the data was coming in, I talked to Tanya, and she told me her story. It had been a hard life for her, and I understood why she hadn't wanted to leave with the rest of them. When the waters finally receded enough that Tanya could walk on the paths, we released some of the protections from the house. Tanya jumped when the roots released themselves, but seemed to accept it as part of living in the strange swamp of Papa Legba. On the 10th day, I manifested as she was packing her bag. There was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there when she first stayed in the house. I smiled to see it. You saved my life, she said. Why? Because you are worth saving, granddaughter. She nodded. Then I'll do your work, Papa. I'll help people as much as I can. Good, I said. Here. I held out my hand, which had cypress seeds and muscadine. She took them. The muscadine is for you. I know you had one a long time ago, but this one will give you some more protection. It ain't foolproof, but it'll help. The seeds are for you and your Lazarus siblings to carry. If you need me, call on me through them, wherever you are. She ate the muscadine, then put the seeds in her pocket. Thank you, Papa. I'll never forget this, but I gotta go. My city needs me. Yes, child, it does. Go on, get out of here. I smiled wide, and so did she. I watched her walk much taller as she left the swamp. All the while, the data kept filling the node under my tree. January 2016. The day was clear and cool. It took many solar turns for all the data to fill the node, but now it was done. I could feel all of us moving through the roots of the swamp, bending and shaping the ship with its engines and data and samples to bring back home. All of the different parts of us finally flowing together. There were many of us, too, who manifested different beings. Jesus, the Buddha, other gods, fairies, dryads, and other spirits. There were some of us who had become sacred groves or haunted forests. We put all we had learned about humans and humanity into the node. It took all of the energy I had to create the seed ship. It was comforting to know that part of myself was staying here, but will also be carried back to the ones I left so long ago. I touched the ship. "It's time," I said. "Yes," said the ship-bound self. "Tell them that humans can't communicate in the normal way, and if any of my siblings encounter them, they should be aware of this. There are many interesting things they can learn from humans, though," I said. "The data will be enough," said the ship-bound self. The swamp around my tree trembled, and the ship rose from the water. Black and sleek, it rose into the blue of the sky, becoming smaller and smaller as it rose through the atmosphere on its way to deep space. Somewhere in New Orleans, I watched as a man walked into his back garden from the house that was finally rebuilt after Katrina. He looked up at the sky and saw the ship disappearing into the upper atmosphere. He pulled out his cell phone, dialed a number, and waited. "Johnny, you won't believe what I just saw. I swear, I saw a UFO. It was black and it looked like a giant seed." He listened to the reply. "Aw, now, you don't believe me? Come on, man. I've been in the Air Force. I've seen some things. And I tell you, man, this was legit." There was a longer reply. The man sighed. Fine, fine. You don't have to believe me. I know what it was. Anyway, where you at? You want to get some gumbo?" There was a pause. "Right. See you there." The man looked to the sky one more time, but the ship had gone. He sighed, but smiled. "I know what I seen," he said to the garden, then went back into his house. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revgenapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.